Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 10 of Sunday Service with Aaron Chandler. Woo! Woo! Oh my God! Woo! Woo! Yes, episode 10. Episode 10. 10 whole episodes, you know? Our first great milestone. You know, when I started this podcast all those weeks ago, I never thought we'd make it here, you know? I never thought that one day my kind of soulless, heartless rambles will bring comfort to twos of people. One of them being my mom. I didn't think it would happen. You know, I didn't think we'd get there. But look at us now, huh? We proved them all wrong. We proved the doubters, you know, the heretics, the non-believers. We proved them all wrong, you know? Because we're living it up large, you know? We're 10 weeks in. We're 10 episodes in. Actually, only 9 weeks in because we did that bonus episode once. Doesn't matter. Still, overall, the product's been delivered. We've hit the milestone. We've achieved greatness, you know? And I'm proud of us, you know? And I just like to say, I could have done it without you, you know? In fact, I already am doing it without you. Only 2 people listen. But I think, you know, I'd like to thank you all anyway for listening, you know? But let's face it, the real star of the show is me. So you're welcome, you know? You know, because I get emails, you know? I get emails from our listeners all the time, telling me things like, you know, if it weren't for your podcast, you know, if it weren't for the one moment in 60 where you make me laugh for kind of 3 seconds, more of a nose exhale than anything, you know? I think if it weren't for that bit of levity in my life, I would have thrown myself into the river. And and you're welcome, you know, because I saved you. Because I'm a great guy. You know, I am a god among men. And I'm proud to be that person for you, you know. It's so great, the things I've achieved in this short window. You know, all of the great things I've done, all of the enemies I've destroyed, all of the friends I've made, all of the lives I've saved by doing this, you know? So I'd like to thank you all again for supporting me in my triumph, in my glory. Thank you all. You know, and I'd like to thank our sponsors, you know? I'd like to thank Manscaped for sticking with us from the very beginning. You know? If it weren't for my smooth nuggets, I don't think I'd be able to record this every week, you know? I don't think I'd be able to impress you all every week with my in-depth analyses of the current affairs and the philosophical intricacies of life. I don't think I'd be able to do it, you know? The Perfect Package 5.0 has really made a difference in my life. And I want you all to know that, you know? Couldn't live without it. And to BetterHelp as well, for showing me that I was actually fine the whole time and that there's nothing wrong with narcissistic personality disorder unless you let there be. So thanks to them too, our longtime supporters. And here's to 10 more. Here's to 10 more glorious episodes of Sunday Service with Aaron Chandler. Right, now that I've, I felt a certain level of obligation to do that since I am so great. But let's crack on with today's episode, you know. And that killed like almost 4 minutes, so. And I was gonna do that bit for the whole episode, but I came up with it right before I was about to record, and it is 1 a.m, so I had to make some sacrifices. I want to go to bed, right? So let's just get through this one, right? You know, I mean, is episode 10 going to be our best episode? Who knows? You know, you guys know, you know what I mean? You guys know already. You've already listened to it. I am only about to say it, so there's a time warp kind of thing going on there where you guys know if it was the best episode or not. I haven't a clue yet, so we'll see how it goes. I don't know. I wrote down a bunch of topics. I don't really want to talk about any of them now, even though they all seem really interesting just a second ago. Does that mean I have ADHD? Probably not. I don't think that's real. I think ADHD is just like, hey, we put 30 kids in a room where they have to look at a chalkboard all day. How come they don't find that interesting? I think that's what ADHD is. I think it's like creating a medical condition for kids not wanting to do something that's really fucking boring. We're swearing 5 minutes in now. You know, I'm gonna have to put put a leash on that if we want these next 10 episodes to go mainstream, right? Or maybe not. Or maybe not. You know? What was I just saying? Oh yeah, definitely I have ADHD. That's wild. So yeah, I guess I don't know, like of these topics, like, oh yeah, here's an interesting thing, right? No, actually, it's not interesting. Fair warning. But I'm going to talk about it for 3 to 7 minutes. So, you know what? Never mind. No, we're not going to talk about that. You know, we'll leave that as more of a tail end topic to book things up on because it's more light and jovial. And it's the 11th on my list, so it would feel wrong to go straight into that one. You know what I mean? I don't know, you know? Like, it's 1 a.m. right now. I don't want to be recording this podcast because I am terrified of the dark, you know? Being afraid of the dark, that's something kids do, right? Is because you think there are monsters, right? And there aren't. And then you realize that, right? You know, you're a kid, you know, you're young, you're growing up, you're thinking there's monsters under the bed. That's probably like an instinct, you know, like a predatory protective instinct, you know what I mean? Like a child shouldn't be sleeping on their own because what if there's a tiger? You know, I think that's where that kind of, that notion of being afraid of the dark is probably born from an anthropological point of view. Yeah, we're going theory of evolution on this, you know, we're not going classical Bible creationism. We're integrating facts into our theological beliefs, right? You know, that's kind of like it's a struggle during your childhood, is being a bit afraid of the dark, being afraid to go to sleep on your own. What they don't tell you is eventually, as an adult, it comes back, or at least it does if you're smart at all, right? Because one of the things you realize when you're like an adolescent is that, oh, monsters aren't real. You know, and then even though you know they're not real, you kind of still think they are for a little while in your soul, right? You know, you hear a little noise, you hear like a twig break at 4 o'clock in the morning, and you're like, oh, am I going to die? You know? But as you get older, as you become an adult, what you realize is monsters aren't real, but people are. And guess what? They can be way worse, actually. And this isn't like an anti-humanitarian podcast, but God, the things a man can do to another man. You know what I mean? Like it's grim, you know? Because a monster might eat you, but like a man might take everything you have and then shove it in your face. You know what I mean? And then like, you know, a monster's not going to torture you, but a man might, you know? You can't wrong a monster, you know? You do something wrong to it, it forgets, or it takes his revenge in the moment, you know? You wrong a man, God knows when he'll strike back, you know? And I think the weight of all the people I've wronged is starting to get to me. Because, you know, I know one day some of them, or even just one of them, will decide that vengeance is necessary. And it's that constant looming fear, that constant threat of danger, that paranoid-induced sense of urgency that has made me unable to sleep a wink at night. So yeah, I'm afraid of the dark. And not just the darkness out there, the darkness within. All right, okay. Look, that wasn't very funny, but it was true. And that's fine, you know? Okay, tonight might be a little bit more of a serious episode. This is kind of our After Dark episode. What if I title it that? I'll title it Sunday Service After Dark. Oh, that could be a great, like, side series. That's what I should call the bonus episodes, you know? If they're ever good, which they're not. Because the one we did was shit. Am I in focus on the camera? Not really. That's fine. Oh, my mouth just touched the microphone. Oh, that makes for some great Photoshop edits, huh? You know? You're welcome, fan base, you know? Ever growing. It's growing exponentially. We went from 0 to 1 to 2. That's an exponential growth. You know, 2 to the X. Boom. Next week, we're going to have 4 viewers. Then 8. Then 16. Then 32. Then 64. Then 128. Then more. Yeah. So it's going great. We're going on the up and up, you know? I think in 4 weeks we will have because there's only 1 episode a week. I think by the end of the year we will have more viewers than there have been people on this planet. So go us, you know, if these projections continue to go up at their current rates, which I see no reason why they wouldn't or couldn't, right? Yeah, I don't know. I think Do you know, I mean, obviously, like, I've always considered myself a bit of an old soul. You know, I think I'm an old guy at heart, you know, because, you know, I'm xenophobic. No, not really. No, I think the reason I'm old at heart is because, yeah, no, that. No. It's because of my kind of not traditional minded views, but more that I'm kind of like, I'm a bit weary of the world, you know. Like, I'm not cynical, but a little bit kind of like, you know, I'm a bit tired of all this shit, you know. And none of this is true. I'm kind of actually a very jovial young person, but this is kind of an on ramp for one of the topics I've written here. So we're gonna keep going with it, right? I'm a bit of an old soul, you know, and the way I am, you know, I've read a book, you know, that's not something people from my generation do, you know, I've read more than one even, you know, but not as many as I tell people I have, you know, I've read like, I've read just enough books that I'm smarter than the people in my community, but not enough that I'm a reader. And not smarter, because reading books doesn't make you smarter. That was a very arrogant and weird thing to say, because I don't believe that, but it's also like the dominant kind of perspective in society that reading makes you smart. No, it doesn't. You just read words, you know? And like, and it depends what you read as well. Like, it's like, okay, like, yeah, like I could, you know, you could read great literature and that could like influence you, or you could just read like horoscopes, you know, and you could read 10,000 words of horoscopes and you'd be no wiser, right? And maybe horoscopes are actually real, you know, but there's not enough evidence to say that they're definitely not, right? There's no scientific theorem that says the horoscopes definitely aren't real. So look, we'll leave it to chance, you know. I mean, I'm taking a gamble on Jesus, you know. If someone wants to take a gamble on Taurus, who am I to judge, right? But you know, one of the reasons I'm old at heart is because, like, right, I'm 24. I'm doing all the midlife crisis stuff now, you know, like becoming a comedian, starting a podcast, getting a divorce, you know, like all that stuff. I'm kind of running through that like at an early stage in my life, you know what I mean? And I think something else has happened to me is I think I'm 30. Because I'm 24, but if you ever watched a TV show where someone turns 30, all of the things that happen to them are happening to me now, which is that, like, I'm tired all the time. I'm gaining weight at an increased rate. I can no longer handle my liquor. And my hair is falling out. Now, maybe I have cancer. That's also possible, you know? Having cancer and turning 30 have similar symptoms. So maybe that's what's happening, right? But I think really is that I'm just getting old, you know? My joints hurt, you know? It's probably because I've lived a life of sedentary indulgence as well, you know? Because a lot of people, I guess, are active in their youth. You know, they do exercise and stuff. Not me, you know? My life kind of exists between this chair and that bed, you know? Like, so I guess it would make sense that my body would give up a little faster. But then again, no, because it's like, okay, my body doesn't have as much wear and tear on it if all I do is walk from here to there, you know? It's like it should be ready to go, but it's not. It's not. My elbows are irritated. They're inflamed from time to time, you know? And maybe that's because I carry things in a way that's very much strenuous on my elbows and not my forearms or triceps. So that might be my fault. But still, like, I feel like God should give me at least another 6 years before any of that starts to really negatively affect me. I feel like at the moment I should be okay. But I guess I'm not, you know? I guess I'm a tall guy too, you know? Tall guys, you know, we live, you know, the brightest candles burn the quickest, you know? Our bodies wear down faster because there's just more stuff in them, you know? So statistically speaking, more things go wrong, right? That's how life and biology work. So yeah, another reason I think I'm 30 is... actually, I don't know. This might be more of a, I don't know where this puts me on the scale of people, because maybe this is just like, this might not be necessarily a generational thing. It might just be more of a loser nerd kind of thing. But in a good way, right? In a kind of fun way. Is, I don't know, like, I don't know if this is relatable or not, but I think, like, for men of my generation, right? 24 to 30, I think there's like this, like, we grew up in a time where there's this kind of inbuilt idea in our brain that surfaces every once in a while, this desire that kind of repeats itself every now and again. Okay, I'm going to have to kind of keep the laptop open because it makes noises every time I open it now, and then the mic is going to pick that up, and then that's going to be bad. Or unless I turn the volume all the way down. That's probably fine. Maybe that'll work, maybe it won't, right? Looking at the mic levels like a podcast producer who shouldn't be interrupting what the host is saying, but does to give it the opinion that no one asked him for. What was I saying? Oopsies. Oh yeah. Every once in a while, men of a certain generation just get an insatiable urge to play Minecraft. And I'm going through it right now. You know, I really want to just, I really want to hit the old blocks and it's just blocks. The game is just block. I really want to punch a tree, get a bit of cobble, the cobble and wood. I really want to hit up the cobble and wood, And it's come to a point in my life where I have to make a decision. Like, it's like, okay, do I want to start a really cool Minecraft world, or do I want to get my driver's license finally? And that's a difficult decision for me. And then there's a third option as well, which is I can start going to the gym and get the Omni-Man physique, rip it up. Those are my three options. And I know two of those options are way better for my life in the long run, but there's only one of them that I actually want to do. And that's to start a Minecraft world, finally learn what redstone is, become a computer scientist through that somehow, and never have sex with a woman, but be very popular on YouTube. That's what I want to do. I want to do that more than anything in the world right now. I'd be willing to give up comedy. I'm willing to give up the podcast here. Like, why isn't this podcast just Minecraft live streams? Do you know what I mean? Because then I don't have to talk as much, because then at least there's visually engaging content on the screen, right? Why not? Why isn't that what we're doing? I don't know. Because I know the second I boot up that Minecraft world, right? When I punch that first tree and feel that satisfaction of the oak log in my hand, and when I make that crafting table and I throw that bad boy down in a place where it will remain forever, I know that I'll get bored of that within 15 minutes. Because I'll think too big too quickly. Because I'll want to make the Starship Enterprise, and within seconds, I'll realize that that's hard, and I'll stop. Within seconds, I'll realize, oh, I can't even get diamond armor. There's a Minecraft movie coming out that looks, this isn't like a unique take or even a funny one, but it looks really bad. It looks really bad. Looks horrible. It doesn't look like a great watch, you know what I mean? Like, I guess the internet is making fun of it a lot. What I do find very funny is that it seems so far, based on all of the content they've shown, is that the movie is just going to be Jack Black explaining how to play Minecraft. Which, honestly, if they did that on purpose, that would be the best movie ever. But they haven't done it on purpose, they've done it by accident. They're doing it for exposition, rather than just having a movie that's just him reading a manual. He is reading a manual, but the movie's not trying to be that. It's trying to be something else. If it was trying to be a movie where Jack Black reads the Minecraft manual, that would be great. But it's not. It's a movie where, like, Aquaman, fights the Ender Dragon on a classical hero's journey, and then also Jack Black is in it explaining Minecraft. Don't do that. Do one of those things, but not both. If it was just a movie about Jason Momoa killing the Ender Dragon, that could be good. You could make the Ender Dragon like a Smaug kind of character, but less rushed and not Sherlock Holmes. That's what you could do. All right, I'm really showing my nerdy side today. And that's fine. You know what I mean? Like, I'm allowed to be nerdy, right? Happy Mother's Day, everybody. For the European crowd, right? If my math serves me correct, which is just looking at the calendar, with the Sunday that this comes out, which is in like a couple hours is the Sunday of Mother's Day in Europe, which is, you know, a holiday. It is definitely one of the holidays that exists, you know? So, I mean, I know for a fact no mothers listen to this podcast except mine. Happy Mother's Day, Mom. No, she doesn't. You know, she pretends to, but like actually, you know, she doesn't have time to be indulging in her child's fantasy. You know what I mean? Like she has bills to pay, you know? She has my bills to pay. God bless her. Oh, that's so funny. There's a housing crisis, guys. I'm allowed. It's not sad like when the Americans do it. It is, but you know, it's understandable as well. You know, no one could call me out because everyone else is doing it. But even though I'm actually doing it in the sad way, whereas they're actually doing it in the way where they're just struggling to find a house, I'm just doing it in the kind of way where it's like, okay, maybe he should, you know, lock in. So that's what's. So happy Mother's Day. I am dreading it. Because I'm working tomorrow. I won't get to spend the day with my mother. You know, I'll arrange some things for her in the future, you know, and I'll present them to her tomorrow to prove that I love her. But overall, most of the day will be spent at work, and I work in hospitality. And guess where you should never work on Mother's Day is it's hospitality because people are evil. I'm in a bit of a people are evil mood today. I was wronged today. That's what happened, right? Because today was a Saturday right before Mother's Day, which means that was when all the smart moms came out, where they were like, okay, obviously it's going to be really busy on Mother's Day, and the service is going to be shit, and the quality of the service is going to be abysmal, which is all true. So let's go out before. And they did, but little did they know that they're not the only people in the world to think of that. So guess what? They still suffered all the negative consequences. But definitely to a lesser extent. So fair enough. So it worked out, but it just wasn't the golden ticket they thought it was, right? That kind of thing. And so like, here's the thing, right? Is that most mothers are very kind, nurturing people. You know, like 90%, and I would say that most people in general, most people are kind, you know, they want to do right by others. You know, they want to like fulfill their obligations towards society, right? Then there are some people who feel that they've fulfilled their obligation towards society and now society needs to pay them back. And those are the people who are in restaurants on Mother's Day. I don't know why. Maybe because, you know, all the sweet, great, wonderful mothers are at home with their kids, spending time with them in a quality way. And, you know, their kids are deciding to cook them a meal or take them out on a road trip or to the spa. And then we're just getting stuck with the riffraff who remembered it was Mother's Day on Friday. And then they were like, oh, let's book a table in a restaurant. You know, that's kind of, I think, where we're at. And actually, no, because, you know, 90% of the people who are going to come in tomorrow, they're going to be nice people. But the ones who aren't, they're going to ruin my life. And I don't know what to do about that, you know? Because there's nothing that makes a person more entitled than when they've actually done something good. Because raising children is it's a great thing to do for the human race. It's how we still live because of moms. But when you actually do something good, you see, the thing is, like, people think that like ego comes from a place of falsehood, you know, like that it's based in like achievements that are like, you know, just you know, it's paper tiger kind of stuff, you know what I mean? I don't even know what that means. I just said the name of a Bill Burr special. You know, like people think ego comes from a place of inadequacy and insecurity, and that you haven't actually done anything great, and then you're projecting that you have as a means of convincing yourself and others that you're a better person than you are. And ego can come from that, definitely. But sometimes, and perhaps more dangerously, people would do something that is actually good, and then that gives them an ego. Because then, like, it's like, oh, I am actually that guy, you know? And I think that happens to some moms, where they raise kids, the kids turn out not to be criminals, and then they just go, wow, I'm class, the world should bend to my will now. Because I made people who were good, which means all these other people should be listening to me, because I make good people. and then they kind of lose their minds. They lose their minds. And then next thing you know, they're shouting at you because they're not at a window seat, even though there's only 2 windows in the restaurant and there's 40 tables. So how can I put you at a window seat? All right, look. That was just me airing some grievances, you know what I mean? Man. The other day I know, every once in a while you get into a confrontation with a customer, and hang on, let me just I gotta cut this for a second. Okay, it's fine. I just didn't want my sister to hear me recording my podcast because I'm deeply ashamed that this is what I'm doing with my life. But she was smoking, and definitely could hear me out the window, so I just stopped for a second to maintain some pride, because I'm a fragile little man who has no sense of self-worth or value, and the idea that my loved ones would know I'm trying to make something of myself in a way that they would deem inappropriate could be knowledge that is made public vexes me for reasons I don't fully understand about myself. So anyway, I guess I actually can't really tell this story without, giving too much away. But I'm going to tell it anyway. The other day I was, with this guest. So here's how restaurants work. You walk into a restaurant. There's a sign that says, "Please wait to be seated." You stand at that sign and you wait. And you wait even if you think you've been waiting ages. And no, you shouldn't wait ages. But guess what? The fact that you've been waiting ages doesn't mean you just get to sit wherever you want. It means you wait. Because if you're seating, it means the waiting is complete. So if you sit down without completing the waiting, you're not supposed to be there. Right? That's how restaurants work. And then here's another way how restaurants work, right? Is just because the table is empty doesn't mean it's not being used. It doesn't mean that they don't need it for someone or something else. So an empty table doesn't mean it's up for grabs, right? So now most people understand this, right? And I didn't have an issue on that level of the process, right? So there was this older couple, and they were entitled. Time's running out for them. You know what I mean? They want what they want and they want it now because they might not get it tomorrow because there might not be it tomorrow, And, as we've talked about before on this podcast, certain old people, God don't want them. And these are among them. That's why they're still around and they're so old. And they come into the restaurant and they've booked a table. They've made a reservation. And I, take them to their table. And so there's 2 tables right next to each other. There's 3 tables right next to each other, actually. They're all in a row. 3 tables in a row. Now, the one on the right, people are sitting at that. And then the one in the middle is empty and the one on the left is empty. Now, I put them in the one on the left because my grand strategy for this evening is once the people on the table on the right leave, I'm going to put the table in the middle and the table on the right together, and they're going to be a table for a bigger group of people. Thinking 10 steps ahead. Chess grandmaster. So I sit this old couple down on the table on the left. And I walk away from the table and I turn around and I notice they've moved to the table in the middle, which they can't do because I need that. So, and obviously, these things happen, they probably never worked in restaurants before in their lives. These things happen quite consistently. It's I don't expect someone who's never been in that industry to know how it all works. Or to even think that it's it's a table of 2. I'm 2 people. I'll sit there. It doesn't matter. It's it's slightly more comfortable. I get that. And usually, if I ever want to do that, I'll maybe ask the waiter, just because I know the business, because I know the biz, I was like, "Oh, is it okay if I move?" And most of the time they're like, "Yeah," And if they say no, usually I'm like, oh, there must be a good reason for that, right? And now what these guys did, they did what most people do, which this is very acceptable, is they just moved tables anyway. No problem there. That happens sometimes. I'll explain to them nicely, oh, hey, you can't sit there, right? That's what I'll do. That's what I do. I walk down to them and I say, oh, excuse me, guys. Sorry about that. I need that table later, so you actually can't sit there. And now, what most people do in that scenario is they go, oh, okay. And they move back to the table you allocated to them. And then what some people do is they go, oh, why is that? And then you explain why you need the table. You go, oh, well, I need it because I'm going to join it with that table later. Chess Grandmaster, like Megamind kind of thing. I'm gonna sort out a table of 4 from these 2 tables of 2s. Ex nihilo cogito ergo sum. I'm sort of a genius, right? 12th level intellect, right? For doing the most basic bit of table arrangement, right? And they're like, oh, wow, you're so smart. I didn't know that's how restaurant works. And I'm like, yeah, man, I am a genius for doing this very basic task. And then usually they're just like, okay, that's fine, right? So that's what I'm expecting, right? Because this couple haven't had any vibes about them so far that made me think that they weren't just nice people, right? So I approach them and I go, hey, so what I said, I'll tell you exactly what I said. Oh, excuse me, guys. I actually can't let you sit there. I'm going to need that table later. And then what this woman said, she goes, there's no reserve sign on it. And already my blood is boiling because I've approached you with a reasonable request and now you're aggressive, right? And, it's one of these kind of classy places where people know that when they shout, they can get what they want. And that bothers me on a deep level, which means I probably just shouldn't work there. But it's fun. It's fun to deal with those types of people. And then I go, oh, well, there's no reserve sign on it, but it is reserved. The policy here is that you're allocated a seat by the host, and then the table arrangements are made that way. So since people aren't seating themselves, we don't need to put a reserve signs up. And then she goes, okay, well, I am sitting here. And I go, oh, well, you see, you actually can't sit there because I'm going to need to move these tables together later. And she goes, no, you're not, because I'm sitting here now. And then I said, and then now at this point, now she's been too rude. It's like, okay, my polite waiter voice, that's gone. And I go, no, you can't sit there. And then she goes, okay, well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk to the manager and I will be sitting here. And there's nothing you can do about it. And now, don't threaten to talk to my manager. Because guess what? He's worked with me every day for years. He's going to take my side over yours because he knows I'm good at my job. He knows I'm a normal person. He knows I'm not an idiot. He knows if I'm telling you not to sit in the chair, that is for a reason. He's not going to just cave in. And now he is a slightly weak man, and that's fine, but he's not going to cave in if I tell him not to. But, this woman doesn't know. But at this point, my sensibilities have been offended because it's like, hey, I'm being nice. I've been too nice up to this point, actually. I've explained to you exactly what I need because at the end of the day, I don't have to explain to you because guess what? I work here. Which means that what I say actually goes. And I know that's not how restaurants work in practice in most of the world. It's like, the customer is always right kind of thing. No, it's like, I'm telling you where you can sit and you're going to sit where I can tell you. And I think in most restaurants, they're afraid to be firm with their customers. Most of the time, if you're just firm with people, they'll just accept it. Not this bitch. I just realized I was about to not say bitch, and then I realized I've sworn so much in this episode, right? So she says this, and she's very, very kind of rude and aggressive about it, and then she shoos me off. She goes like, go on, I'm sitting here, and then I said, Miss, you will not be served if you sit there. And then she said, what did you say to me? And I said, you will not be served in that chair. And she said, you can't do that. I'm sitting here. And I said, yes, I can. And then she got up and walked out the door. Now, she walked out the door into the hallway, and when she was in the hallway, I saw her talking to my boss, and she was very upset. Because I said the thing that you're not supposed to say, which is the truth, which is that, hey, this isn't flying. Like, you're not going to get whatever you want by acting like a child. This isn't how the real world works. It is how restaurants work, but I feel in this moment it's my moral duty to not allow you to do that. And by moral duty, I mean my blood is just boiling because you've really pissed me off, and I've not had a great day because Mother's weekend, so I'm not letting this fly on this occasion. See her in the hallway arguing with my boss. My boss comes in, he's like, wow, that woman seemed mental. And then I was like, yeah. And then he was like, what happened? And I explained what happened, and he was like, I'm glad she left. And then I was like, yeah. And then I was like, of course you are. But now she's gone home and she's thinking, I bet that guy got fired. And you know what? Honestly, good for her, if that helps. I don't know, you know what I mean? Like, maybe she was having a bad day too, you know what I mean? I think she had a bad life, That's what I think. Because there's way too much venom in those words for it to just be like her kid forgot to send her a Mother's Day gift. Like, the venom in those words was like, I've been married to this idiot so long that I've forgotten who I am. I never wanted kids. He did. He forced me to have them. That was kind of the vibe I was getting from her as a human being. Like, so I do feel bad for her in a way because, if you're behaving that inappropriately in public, like, obviously your brain is fucked. So obviously that's kind of sad. But at a certain point, it's like, okay, why is this my problem though? You know what I mean? And that's because I'm a selfish, narcissistic guy. It's like, once you make it my problem, my empathy goes away. Which is, an evil way to be in the world, but also a very effective one. So yeah, that's something. But no, like, she was really very rude. It's one of these ones where, like, sometimes, right, because a lot of, I don't have these, types of interactions very often, but a lot of the times when you have an interaction, and usually I'm a little bit more polite, it's just on this occasion, I was just like, all right, she took the gloves off so immediately and so heavily that I'm very justified in being very firm with her. Whereas usually I try to be as nice as possible for as long as possible. But it was one of these ones, and this happens very often, where, like, if someone kind of, like, it just flips their lid in public, like, people on the other tables around will, like, come up to you and be like, hey, just so you know, that was inappropriate. And you're kind of like, oh yeah, I know. But, like, what they mean is they're just like, hey, I'll back you if you need me, which is nice. It's nice when strangers kind of back up, like, the morally righteous kind of thing to do, Because, I mean, and that's why, like, I was an asshole about it. I'm not going to deny that, but it was justified in the case. Like once she crossed me, I was like, I mentally decided, like, oh, like, she's not eating here. And now that's not what I wouldn't have pursued that, wholeheartedly if she'd just given in. But, like, the second, the more she resisted, the more I was like, oh, like, I might just not let you sit down at all. Which you can do because the customer isn't always right. And it's very rare that restaurants do it. And it's very rare that I would do it to someone. I'm not a dickhead. I'm not like, I'm willing to put up with a lot of pompous behavior because, that's what it says to do in my contract. But, like, at a certain point, it's just like, whoa. I don't think I've sold enough how horrible this was, but it's fine. Because I'm done talking about it now. So that's just an interesting story, right? And I think if you're a person who's worked in hospitality, I think there's a certain, like, kind of cathartic element of that, in the sense that I kind of, like, it was one of the few times where I got to say the thing I actually wanted to say. But wow, I was so angry. Like, my blood pressure was up for the day after that. It was when she said, it was when I said, oh, I need to move the table later. When she said, you're not moving the table later because I'm sitting here. And I was like, oh, okay. Because now you think reality revolves around you when it doesn't. It revolves around me because I'm the main character of life. That's how egotistical and narcissistic I am. No. That's only mostly true. My ego is getting out of hand. My ego has gone mad. Like, it's getting unreasonable, you know? And one of the things that happens when your ego gets out of hand is you actually become worse. Because when your ego is in check, you're constantly trying to improve and be better. And then you are, because you're working against resistance. But the second you kind of get egotistical about things, then you start becoming worse at being great. And then you're less great. But so, like, eventually, like, you know, it all falls apart and you start from scratch to build up your ego again. But right now, I'm kind of in one of these peaks where it's like, oh, I feel a bit too good about myself and someone's going to need to put me in my place pretty damn soon. But it's been happening that I've been getting put in my place and it's not fully bringing me back down to earth. So I think what might be happening is a Charlie Sheen thing. Like, I think, you know, like, I think the horse tranquilizer's coming in hot, you know? And we're going to see how that goes. We're going to see if I have the inevitable fall. You know, the bubble will burst where I realize that I'm actually like nothing and an, you know, an infinitesimally small speck of dust in a vast cosmos that doesn't care. Or alternatively, the other type of humility, whereas that I am but a humble servant of the Lord our God, and that I am nothing compared to his glory and greatness and forgiving nature. You know, maybe one of those things will happen. Unlikely, what will probably actually happen is I'll end up in an insane asylum, Arkham style, you know? And not on a Joker one, but more of like I guess a Two-Face, or possibly, you know, I think more of a Riddler one. I think we all agree that I've got a kind of a Riddler vibe about me. And, you know, that's not, I don't like that about myself, you know? I wouldn't say that's a part of myself that I, you know, want to encourage to exist. You know, I'd like to be a good Christian man, but in my soul, is that who I am? No, in my soul, I want to leave puzzles as clues at the scenes of murders. You know, that's what I want to do in my soul. You know, I want a little trophy that you have to play a fingerprint game to unlock. That's who I really want to be. You know, I want to blow up the seawall. You know, but if there was a seawall, hey, don't build your cities under the sea level. Not Denmark, Netherlands. You know, just accept that that land is gone. Because I mean, look, the polders in Denmark. I mean, talk about an accident waiting to happen. Jesus, like, I mean, the amount of things that like humans can't even get like basic things right. You know, like normal cities flood, and then they're like, oh, but we built it to withstand the worst flood in 10,000 years. But what about when there's a worse one? Because there will be, you know. And I know they were even taking climate change into account when they did all this. But what if it does? What if like there's a crack? Because there could be, and there probably will. Because statistically speaking, things go wrong. Like, you know, the more time passes, the more likely something is to go wrong. And in this case, if it goes wrong, guess what? Your country is gone. Guess what? Millions of people are displaced. Guess what? Decades upon decades of work is undone in weeks. Just invade Denmark. Just invade Belgium. Just take the land the old-fashioned way. To hell with the international order. You know, if Putin can do it, the Netherlands can do it. And, you know, and guess who doesn't have nuclear weapons? Belgium. Guess who doesn't have nuclear weapons? Netherlands. Guess what they can do? They can have a war. Because that's allowed when you can't obliterate Earth. You know? That's what you're allowed to do. Nuclear weapons kind of just ruined the vibes on war completely, right? Because, it used to be untold, hitherto undreamt of destruction that would just, you know, ruin the lives of countless thousands, countless millions even. But at least it was kind of like guaranteed that it would all be fine. You know, like you could burn all of the land from Warsaw to Stalingrad and then burn it again the next year. And then it would kind of be like, yeah, but like nature's going to fix that, obviously. But nature can't fix whatever the fuck happened to Hiroshima. You know, whatever happened in Chernobyl, nature can't undo that. Not on a time scale that's like, that mitigates concern. You know, it can probably, like, I mean, I think aren't scientists surprised by how fast Chernobyl's recovering? Like, it's not recovering well at all, but like things live there now again. But then again, like nuclear fallout is kind of like, It's one of those things. It's such an unseen phenomenon that like that's what's kind of scary about it. Is like you could, like in Chernobyl when they like look into the fire and then it's like, oh, like there's a thing of like they just looked into a fire that killed them like half an hour ago, but they're only seeing it now because of like the radiation and stuff, right? That's all of that information is true, but everyone already knew it. So yeah, what is I wrote a marriage here as a topic. I don't know why I did that. I want to get married. I want to have a wedding. Not a good reason to get married, by the way. But also a fun part of the marriage process. But I also, if you're the bride or groom, the wedding is horrible. So there's that. Afraid of the Dark, we got that. We talked about how it's the 10th episode and how we're great. Woo! Yeah! Oh, yeah! I went to Ennis this week. That was fun. I like a good road trip. You know what I mean? It's nice to just... Because the thing about when you're in the car with people is that it's a pretty good justification to not do anything productive for like 3 hours. Or in this case, 2 hours, Because it's like, what am I going to do? Like, sit on my phone and write? Like, now I'm rude. What am I going to do? I might go to sleep. Tea. Oh yeah. Hey, say M 3 times. That'll be great for the audio exclusive podcast. Yeah. People will really like that, won't they? I need to get better at this. This is what I need to get better at. By the way, I've blown through most of these topics and, like the ones I've gotten through, I didn't get as much out of them as I wanted to. And the ones I haven't gotten through, I've realized aren't very interesting. Like, I don't even know what I was thinking about marriage for. Like, was I thinking about it in the sense of like goats and political alliances, or was I thinking about it in like terms of like Charles and Diana, or was it just more of like I will be alone forever kind of thing? Gosh, I guess like I kind of wish I had a kid. Like, I kind of wish I kind of wish I got a girl pregnant when I was way younger. And like, obviously that would have been horrible for me, her, and the baby. But I think now it would be fine, And then also I'd have my life back when I'm 38, which is basically like the start of life now because people live so long. Like, that's still like early-ish first half. Like, you're like 2/3 of the way through the first half. Like, that's fairly early first half, all things considered. Especially when there's a whole other half. Now it's an objectively worse half, but it's still like 38 to like 56. Like, you could cook up a real life in that time, and you don't have to worry about the kids because they're grand, they're off having the time of their lives, following in their father's footsteps, like, dumping clips. But I guess it was probably for the best that I didn't do that. I don't know why, because society told me. Society told me you're not supposed to have a baby when you're young, even though that's what people did forever. I guess moms die in pregnancy a lot. That's sad, but not anymore. We figured that out. That was one of the things we figured out. Well done to us. That was almost as impressive as me making 10 episodes of this podcast. I've been having a lot of kebabs lately. I had 2 kebabs this week, and they were both very good. Now, I actually had like a whole thing prepared for comparing and contrasting these kebabs. I don't know if that's interesting though. It would kill 10 minutes, which is what we have left in the episode, which is because I'm gonna keep it tight tonight because I want to go to sleep so badly because tomorrow morning I have to entertain. I mean, I got my lines ready for like the cool moms, I got the so which one of you is the mother, huh? You both look like sisters to me. I've got that stuff ready to go. I'm excited to pull that out, but I'm also not excited for the ones where you're just like, like, oh, are you sisters? And they're just like, do we look like sisters? Like, I'm clearly the mother. Like, are you trying to be disrespectful? I'm prepared for that as well. Is there any topics that we didn't cover last week that maybe we could cover this week? Nope. Okay, that's pretty good. So yeah, the kebabs. A lot of these also, I just don't know what I I need to become more consistent. That's what I need to become more. I need to be more consistent, right? With this podcast, with my writing, with just being a person, you know? Like, I'm really good at really working hard for like a week. But then it's like, okay, now there's 3 months of nothing. But then there'll be a week at the end of those 3 months where I make unbelievable progress. Like the amount, like Orville to Apollo 11 progress. You know what I mean? Like, we go from like learning how to fly to getting to the moon in like 50 years. That's the level of progress I make in these weeks. But for the rest of the time, it's just like, okay, all of human history, where you're just like, okay, how do birds do that? Maybe if we just build big sticks and flap them. You know, that's what it was before that. I know, I remember when I was in school, you know what it is when they teach you history in school, is like, they teach you like whatever historical event they're teaching you about, they act like all of human history was basically centered around just that until it happened. Like, all of human, like, when I learned about the Orville brothers and their first flight, or not the Orville brothers, the Wright brothers, Orville Wright, and the other one. I only know that because of the Seth MacFarlane Star Trek thing. Like, when you learn about them and them building their first flying machine, like, they'll teach it like, for all of human history before that, all people were thinking about was how to make a flying machine. Like, that's how they make it out, you know? They do that with every piece of history. Like the discovery of America by Columbus, you know? Like, they make it out like all people were doing was going to Portugal and sailing west and dying for thousands of years. And that's all people were focused on for some reason, you know? I guess it makes it easier to digest as a kid if there's a more of a narrative structure, you know? I guess that's what the Bible does with Jesus. But that actually was all building up to him. I like Jesus, you know? He's one of my favorites, right? Favorite what's, Aaron? Religious figures, people, ideas, some of those. I like Batman, the Killing Joke. Sorry, I'm just looking at my bookshelf here. I'm looking for inspiration because I realize I don't really like a lot of these topics I have here. I'm not going to talk about the kebabs. Now, because one of them had great meat and one of them had great kebab structure and better toppings. And the meat was definitely superior on one of them, but the sauce and the toppings and the kebab structure was better on the other one. But then it's like, what actually matters? Because one of them had red cabbage, which is an unreal topping, and the other one only had lettuce and onion, which are good toppings, every standard issue. But the other one that had the red cabbage also, which added a certain level of, it added a certain zest to the whole meal. Also just had higher quality ingredients when it came to the toppings. But then the meat on the first one was sort of next level, especially because on the other one they messed up the meat ratio because there wasn't enough chicken, even though it was a mixed kebab, not a Doner exclusive kebab. So the fact that there wasn't much chicken kind of insulted me a little bit. Because at the end of the day, like, I only want one baby lamb to die a week for me to survive, not more than that. And now I feel like kind of maybe two did between the two kebabs and the extra doner meat on the second kebab, where the meat quality wasn't as good. So you know the baby lamb was crying when it died, and that just made me sad. Because already I was thinking about the fact that we only eat baby sheep for some reason. Now I know that it was sad when it died. Said that like John Oliver. Lambs! What a crazy guy. John Oliver, we're showing it. We're showing almost as bad as this podcast, but on a TV network, you know? What would he say about lambs? You know what I mean? I don't know. Elon Musk, the hamburglar of democracy. That's the kind of stuff John Oliver says, you know what I mean? What would he say about Mother's Day? Mother's Day! Mother's Day, or as my wife calls it, the only good day of the year. Just the most straightforward stuff like that ever. Mother's Day, or as my mother calls it, the day John called me. You know, just that's kind of very easy stuff. That's what and actually it's the funniest thing ever. Which is what I do on this podcast, but I'm way less successful and way less talented, I guess. I don't know. Yeah, Ennis was grand, you know. That's a lie. But there's not much to it really. We went there. It's just any other Irish town, you know. There's a river, you know. There's lads who fought in the War of Revolution, you know. There's the remains of what was probably a once great rail system. I mean, like, because the Germans didn't tear down the Autobahn when the Nazis got defeated. You know, they kept that. But Ireland, you know, we defeated the British, and then we were just like, now let's destroy the one good thing they did. Sorry for defending the British there. I'm not a loser. So yeah, that's something. I only have 5 more minutes left. I don't even have to do 5 more minutes really, but I will. You know, out of a sense of obligation. It's the 10th episode. You know, this is a special occasion, right? What else? Come on, we can come up with a topic here. You know what I mean? Give me something, guys. Come on, you know, because I'm always the one putting all the work into this. You know, you guys never give anything back to the community, and I've noticed. You know, and look, hey, did Christ ask anything in return of his followers? No, he didn't. You know, or maybe he did. I'm a little fuzzy on the details. You know, but like all I know is that he was basically a good guy. And good guys are usually selfless in an implicit way, but not as selfless in a way that they'll let other people walk all over them, but selfless in a way is that they like help other people and do good things for them. And that's what Jesus was as a person, I think, or maybe he wasn't even real. But probably he definitely did exist a little bit, but maybe didn't come back from the dead. But maybe he did also. You know, you weren't there. You don't know. You know what I mean? And that's. Look, hey, Sam Harris, we don't know. We weren't there. Were you there? No. You know what I mean? So maybe he did come back from the dead. You know? And I know you're just like, well, that's not good enough. But isn't it? It's enough that we don't know that he definitely didn't. So back off with your arguments, you know? Free will is an illusion. Oh, then what's experiencing the illusion? Oops. That, by the way, said that like it was a big put down, not a coherent argument. Because I'm not smart. I just wear glasses. I just think I'm smart. I wear glasses. I talk confidently. I talk loudly. I talk quickly. It confuses people into thinking that what I'm saying makes sense, but it doesn't. And we're going to be doing a lot more of that for the next few episodes of the podcast. Let's talk about our grand strategy for the next 10 episodes of the podcast, right? Okay. Next episode, we're going to swear less. Especially in the first 10 minutes where we will eventually want to monetize on YouTube, right? That's step 1 of our master plan, right? Step 2 is, let's say episode 20, we get a guest, right? Good idea. Hard to do. Would need another microphone. Now, even though on YouTube, if you're listening, you're still hearing through the phone mic because I haven't set up the camera yet because I'm lazy and because of the HDMI and the external recorder and that, but doesn't matter. You know, episode 16, we want to have that swearing down to like not until 15 minutes in. You know what I mean? That's what I think we want to aim for. Episode 17, we want to make an episode where I made myself laugh at least twice, which means the audience will probably laugh at least once. Whereas now we're kind of a 1 for 0 kind of vibe, right? So that's what we're aiming for, right? By episode 100, I want a harem. And not necessarily, you know, of women either. Just a harem, an abstract kind of idea, you know, like maybe like a queen bee has, you know what I mean? It could just be bees. So yeah, those were words, and it's 1 minute left. So, you know, here's to 10 more, huh? Here's to you, Mrs. Robinson, eh? Here's to the back 9, huh? Here's to life, huh? Here's to me being more consistent. Here's to Mother's Day. Happy Mother's Day, y'all. That story I wrote about Mother's Day was just me venting frustrations because my blood pressure was so high after that unpleasant interaction with that evil woman, who was probably just going through a tough time because her life was really bad. And even if her life wasn't really bad, if her life was great, then even then maybe she's having a tough day. And if she wasn't having a tough day at all and she's evil, then I guess everything that I said originally stands to reason. But also, still I forgive her because, boom, good Christian, great guy. That's a little kind of like, But I'm only saying that because my narcissistic need to be liked knows that people like selfless people. So, we did it, right? Here's to you, Mrs. Robinson, huh? Where have you? I can't sing the song because of the. Is that enough to get demonetized? Probably. All right. Take it easy, everybody. God bless. We'll see you at Mass next week. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. I only know the version of it in Irish because I went to an Irish primary school, so I don't know it in English. But I know the vibe. The general vibe is that God is good and that humans are all right and could be better. I think that's kind of the central message of Christianity. All right, well, bye guys.